And if you want to just dive right in, and I'll join up as soon as I can.
Perfect. Okay. Well, we are so happy to have Tara Adams, who's been with ATB since 2007. She was a learning consultant, and she has a strong background in learning and facilitation, and is now the ATB's corporate wellness manager for Alberta. That's a lot of employees that she oversees with wellness. And so she's a champion of workplace wellness. She has certificates from the Mental Health Commission of Canada and the Queen's University, and Brain Story. I love Brain Story.
Love Brain Story. We'll talk about that.
Oh, good, good. So Tara, we want you to just feel free to jump in. There is already a question. Judith is asking, how do you, where did it go? Where did my chat go? My chat has disappeared. There it is. How do you convert fear into opportunity? She's asking.
Are you asking me as a human being and as a mom? For sure. I just want the folks out there to know that I am super blessed to be working for ATB Financial, to be working in corporate wellness, but I'm not a clinical health and wellness expert. So I'm not here to give you any medical advice or take the place of you reaching out to professionals. So that's really important. And I know Connie, Abe, and I are all on the same page. You have certain experience in life, in your career, and we're happy to share it. But please don't quote me as any medical or clinical advice for you folks. But converting fear to opportunity, my first instinct is to create a safe space for you to be rested and thoughtful about where your fears are coming from. I had an inspiring conversation just coincidentally yesterday with someone who said, I lost a few sleepless nights, and I really had to think, was I scared of getting sick? No. Was I scared of homeschooling? Maybe. But just really taking an inventory and how much that helped her. This was just a casual conversation yesterday. And so she realized, okay, I had a fear, but I had to figure out, what is this fear? And then all of us as lay people, what can you control and what can't you control? So my fear is financial or health or family or my own mental health. Whatever it is, we boil it down, get out that pen and paper. What can I control in that fear, in that situation? And what can't I control? What do you think, Connie?
I think that is brilliant. I mean, that's really all we can do, isn't it? As human beings.
And reach out and talk to a mental health professional. That is their sweet spot, helping you walk through those fears, giving you coping strategies, helping you become more resilient. I mean, that we are the bridge helping you get there to those people who specialize in exactly that kind of great question, who many of us relate to. Many.
Yeah. Well, that's a great question. And Judith just says that was a wonderful answer. So isn't that great?
You're so sweet, so supportive. I love it. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, why don't we get into, I love Coffee with Tara is just the best. We just banter back and forth and we chat about what we really think about things. And when Tara was sharing, yes, there you go. When she was sharing about her thoughts around mental wellness, I'm like, you need to share this with the world, because what Karen is about to share is not something that everyone is sharing, and it's refreshing. I love it. You're bold and you're daring and you're saying what needs to be said. And so why don't you take it where you want to start, Tara?
Sure. And again, I'm not prescriptive and I don't know everyone's situations, but I've had hundreds of conversations about workplace mental health, and there's a couple of general themes that come through. So I'm happy to share those. If it resonates, put something in the chat and we can dig in. So to start off, early days of quarantine, early days, March 16th-ish, where depending where you are, depending where you live, I think in those first few weeks 1 to 5, 1 to 6, there was two things I would like to turn on their head a little bit. The first one, if anyone out there watches Letterkenny, hilarious Canadian comedy, they have a saying in that that goes something like, take her down about 20%. Just take it down a notch. It's too much. And that was such a strong theme in all of my group and one-on-one conversations those first few weeks. So great intent, great people doing great work. In fact, your best work, and pushing out tons and tons of resources and ideas and suggestions to folks who were frankly overwhelmed, overloaded, exhausted. And so gently trying to say to folks, you know, if you write the most brilliant workplace mental health tool, communication, and article, recognize that folks may cognitively not be able to absorb anything right now, much less your best work. So can we just think about taking things off of people's plates? Can we think about doing less to people? Can we think about putting out less stuff, even when your stuff is brilliant?
Even when your stuff is brilliant.
Even when your stuff is brilliant. I'm so sorry. Those first few weeks, it might not have landed anywhere. I hope my husband's listening. He knows I always talk about him in every presentation, but you know, he is a thoughtful, smart guy who's working and parenting and quarantined. And he's like, I just can't read any more emails. Right? And that's the truth. He's like, I can't absorb any more of this stuff. And I heard that from lots of people at ATB as well. Not to throw him under the bus.
So can I just make sure I'm hearing you clearly? So are you saying that there is a place where too much information is actually too much, and it doesn't actually support us? So, I mean, let's just talk about that, because everybody right now is, I'm going to suggest, being barraged, and I would also suggest that a lot of the information is probably really good. You know, I don't think anyone's like spreading hate. I mean, I'm sure there's that, but most of what we're getting is probably really good. But what then's the alternative? Like how if I'm a leader on this call, how can I be strategic about what I send to my folks so that I'm not overwhelming them, but giving them the support they need?
Yeah, and I was going to touch on this later, but let's just do it now. I mean, honestly, if we're speaking specifically about a workplace, and maybe you're in a small or medium-sized business that doesn't have wellness strategies and communications teams. I mean, I'm so blessed to have so many people to collaborate with. So if you're on your own trying to go on this journey, don't think sexy, new, splashy, OMG, here we go. Think boring, consistent, and simple. This is the times we're in. How many mental health resources are any of us going to access? I want to say 2 or 3. 2 or 3. And so we are blessed in this time of change. There's a lot of innovation in the world of workplace mental health and clinical mental health as well. There are all kinds of amazing new telehealth options. If you find one, use one, fantastic. You don't need to sign up for 6. You don't need to sign up for 6. If you happen to work for a company that's large enough to have an EAP, Employee Family Assistance Program, I know that's not sexy and cool sometimes. Just stick with that. Stick with the plan. Program that phone number into people's phones. If I was leading a team of 10, 15, 20, I would have a little group huddle and I'd say, hey, take out your phone, program the phone number for your EAP. And then they say, what is an EAP? You say, okay, EAP, this is what it's for. Intervention, prevention, getting you across the bridge to a mental health professional 24/7. And I know it's not splashy, cool, and modern, but that's coming. That's coming as we settle in and we become more open and ready to learn new tools, new theories, new ideas, new leadership styles. I would say we're still in such an early stage right now. Stick to 2 or 3 simple mental health resources. And with your friends too, if you knew someone who was struggling, here's the distress center, here's some AHS numbers for those Alberta folks. That's it. Don't send them 15 links and 16 articles and 7 memes and 3 pictures and a virtual tour of Africa link. Like, it's too much. It's too much.
So then, a quick question for you, and appreciating that you're not speaking to us as a clinician, you know, you're speaking to us as a manager of corporate wellness for a very large company, and you know your role is quite diverse. But what are some of your favorite resources that have helped you through this time? And I think that's important because, you know, again, there's leaders on this call, there's executives, there's entrepreneurs, there's folks out there being parents, being moms, being dads. What resources have really been there for you in this time?
Aside from friends, aside from coworkers, both of whom have really, in YouTube, the call I had with YouTube boosted me for days. I'm a big fan of a company's EAP program. I'm a big fan of the Mental Health Commission of Canada and anything they provide. I also really like the Text for Hope program. So simple, free. You get one text a day to your phone with a gentle reminder of one thing you could do today to support your mental health. Keep it simple.
Keep it simple. I remember when we were in a mental health crisis, people would tell me there's resources everywhere. Oh, we have so many resources these days. But it's almost like that Netflix of resources. There's so much out there, you don't even know where to look, and you almost just shut down.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the best analogy I can give you is the homeschooling one. So if you happen to be in that spot right now, have a chuckle. But especially in those first 4 or 5 weeks, I'm just wondering how many of you would like another text, another email, another link of all the extra resources you can do in the virtual safaris. And here's a scavenger hunt. And it was so overwhelming. And yeah, I said, I need to, for my mental health, just declutter this, stick to Google Classroom. I've got 2 Google Classrooms. That's enough for me. I'm barely treading water there.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And I like this. I like the simplicity. And then you also mentioned, you know, to really honor the trauma. When you said that statement, it really hit me.
Yeah, there is some beautiful work again coming out talking about the impact of this pandemic and isolation and quarantine. And I'm not an expert, but the idea that you might be experiencing what I would call undue pressure, whether it's from yourself, from other people, or especially in the social media. So this idea that certain people are putting out there, and it goes something like this: well, if you're not maximizing this time, you're lazy. And if you haven't learned to speak Mandarin and renovated your bathroom and done a plank challenge, then what's wrong with you? Let's go. You're quarantined. That is not true. You do not have to take on anything. In fact, in a very normal reaction to this kind of situation, you might feel tired. You just might be exhausted. And that could be a completely normal reaction. And so if you're feeling exhausted and overwhelmed, and then you're hearing about all the self-help reno projects that are being built, and you're thinking, what's wrong with me? Why didn't I start my MBA? Because I'm in quarantine, right? Now, if you are in a place where you have the energy and the focus to do some of the things you've always wanted to do, maybe you have extra time, you have extra privacy, I'm happy for you. I'm so happy for you. Learn a new language, play the guitar, rip out those tiles. But if you're not doing any of that, you're fine. You're normal. The goal here is to survive this new situation, muddle your way through. For me personally, each week is its own lifetime. Each week is so different. I'm in week 7. Each of those 7 weeks, I've learned and changed so much.
I wonder how many others in our call right now would say the same, that every week is been different. They say, I just read an article actually this morning, that they're saying that we're entering into what they call the weird stage of this quarantine. Can you maybe talk to that a little bit?
Well, again, as a layperson who's read a couple of articles in the last, I'd say 72 hours, this normal feeling many of us may be having of boredom isn't maybe the quite word, but stagnant, right? Like I'm frustrated, I'm bored, I'm ready to move on. I'm ready to get out. I'm ready to go out. I'm ready to maybe relax some of the vigilance I had in weeks 1 to 7. And in fact, that's a dangerous point in time, right? So if we are and I'm so sorry, if we're reading articles about predictions based on science and medicine, that we're looking at months and years in different formats, in different stages, 7 weeks is the beginning. We're still at the beginning. So how are we going to work together to relieve this feeling of boredom and frustration, which is so immediate and so real, with the bigger picture of what's happening, and recognize that you may be experiencing trauma and grief and impacts that you haven't acknowledged on you physically and mentally. And grief, I know, Abe, we talked about this. Grief could be, in the more classic sense, heaven forbid you've lost someone due to COVID or not, people who have passed away in the last 2 months, the sadness that we can't grieve in the most human way together is devastating. It is devastating. But we're also grieving things that are not as classic. And so open your mind to that idea. We are grieving how we used to live. We are grieving the time we had with other people. We also have anticipatory grief, things we were going to do. That amazing African safari you saved up for 4 years that was in July, that isn't happening, and that's very hard. The first season of spring soccer, we're grieving all the things we're not going to do, all the things we're not doing anymore, and sadly we are grieving the loss of people in our lives too. So just try your best to acknowledge what's happening, feel it physically and mentally, and don't put that undue pressure on yourself. I mean, if you want to learn Mandarin, go for it. I'm proud of you, super proud of you. I'm gonna just keep the lights on at home and at work.
I have to learn Filipino because my wife is Filipino, so no Mandarin for me. But I've been working on my my Tagalog, So, but so here's one question I have for you, and again, I always like to bring it back to the practical level because you've got all these folks out there, right? And I think it's good. I think it's actually really good. Like, I want to support my team,
Yeah.
help my team. I want to be there. But I had actually had somebody say this, not to me the other day, but they were actually talking about their boss, and they just said like I'm just tired of being checked in on. I mean, I'm actually okay, and if I'm not, I'm going to let everybody know. But I don't need once a day somebody doing this and doing that. And so, what are some strategies that you would give to sort of managers or people who feel responsible for others, so that we're present, we're engaged, but we're also not almost like invasive or weird about it? Because I think now we're at the stage where it's getting kind of weird, right? Like if
it is,
it
is.
So
let's tell it like it is, right, Connie? You asked me to keep it on the straight and narrow, so I will. This has come up so many times, and I will tell you, it doesn't usually come up in a big group learning conversation. It comes up in a one-on-one, like, hey Tara, like, is something wrong with me? My boss checks on me every day. And I'm starting to think, like, am I showing some signs of something being wrong with me? And this is like a passionate leader who's embracing workplace mental health, who's doing exactly what we said. So what did we say weeks 1, 2, 3, 4? Physical distance, yes. Social distance, no. Reach out, talk to everybody, check on everybody, check, check, check. That's what we said. Okay, well, 4 or 5 weeks into it, folks were like, you know what? I'm good. So what was shocking to me is I have a friend who's a self-proclaimed introvert, of which I know nothing about because I'm a 10 out of 10 extrovert. And she said to me, I have never been so social in my life. And I thought, what are you talking about? She's like, I'm on FaceTime 6 times a day. I'm on video all day for work. And then I FaceTime my friends and family. And I'm exhausted because I'm not used to this much interaction. And I thought, you are blowing my mind. Like, right. And then on the flip side, those of us who are kind of extreme extroverts, I've had some moments where it's like, you know what I need? I need some time alone. I need to get away from these people that I love. And this has never happened. So the over-checking with great intent, with absolutely genuine leadership values behind you, You just need to pause and think, am I inadvertently maybe overchecking or causing some stress? Or am I checking in the way that I want to be checked in on? So I'm sorry to say there isn't like a perfect solution. What I would say is just remember that each week is a lifetime. And so if you're checking on me quite frequently this week, maybe next week you're not, and vice versa. And if this week you're checking in with me on video, and then we have a conversation about screen fatigue, maybe next week we chat on the phone, right? And maybe then we have some texts, and then maybe I'm not doing so well and I need more support and we're back to video. I know that's not a clear-cut answer, but Abe, I've had that conversation, I want to say 10 times. Why is everybody checking on me so much?
It really forces us to lean in as humans and come back to the idea that we're really made for connection, and we can't program or tools and strategies that doesn't work with connection. Like, we all in our workplaces, we want the 3 steps to better employee engagement.
Yeah.
Connection is like, no, like, you really have to lean in and know your people. And how do you know, Tara, how do you know 5,000 people? Like that's, how does this even work?
Well, I start alphabetically January 1st, and then I just keep going. You know, again, I work on a team. I work in an amazing sort of department, like communications, HR, people and culture. There's lots of people. I think it's more about teaching leaders to check in, right? Like, I certainly personally am not checking in on 6,000 people at ATB. I want to. Hello, hi, I want to. It's not possible. So coaching and guiding leaders on some of these tips that are really basic and easy to forget. We are so caught up in this great intent, and the more we read, the more we're worried about our people and their mental health, right? So, you know, from Friday afternoon to Monday morning, you've read 10 new articles about the mental health pandemic. There's the global pandemic, and then the mental health tsunami is coming. It's coming. We can't avoid it. What are we going to do? All of that is true. Monday morning, you're like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to double those check-ins on my people. Well, just, you know, you're on the right track, but just be careful. Be careful, because Abe and I are getting the calls like, hey, why is everyone checking on me every day? I need a minute.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting too, because some of this is personality, I think, and some of this is like situational. Like I think one of the best things a manager can do is just ask people, like, what, like, legit, like, what do you need from me? And here's pretty much what's on the table, and here's what I can offer. And you know, I've done that in the past, and I've had employees say, "Look, you know what? I'll let you know if they need anything," and they mean it. You know, like that's legit. And then I've had others who say, "You know what? Just even a text once a day would be great." And what do you think about that? Like, just the value of asking somebody, what do you need from me?
I think I can clearly give you an analogy. And by the way, Mother's Day is coming up. So when you're thinking about, I saw a thing that said, heads up, dads and parents and spouses, teachers aren't making your Mother's Day gifts this year. Heads up. So think about gift giving. Think about that. When you give people the gifts that you like getting, you know, the thought counts, but does it really land? If you give somebody something they want, I love coffee, you love tea. When I give you a coffee gift card, eh. But when I go to the tea store and I buy you a really nice tea and I give that to you, it's showing that I'm listening to you. And the same thing goes with the check-ins, right? So if you don't like video, video is causing extra anxiety for the person on the other end, turn it off, right? And all those little nuances. I think some advice I'd like to throw out there for leaders, employees, human beings, all human beings, is basically know your role. So if you are a clinical mental health professional, thank God you're here. I love you. Thank you for your work. Keep doing it. The rest of us who are not clinical mental health professionals, our job is to help people get to you when they need it. That's our job. So be empowered by knowing your role, and be relieved as well that that's not your role. Like, it's both. Feel like, oh, good, so I'm not a therapist. Excellent. But what you are is a superhero who can support mental health by helping people get to those clinical mental health professionals. And we can't do this without all of us helping people get over the bridge. So how do you do that? Think about this. You have to role model, first of all behavior is contagious, good and bad. So if you're telling, and not showing, it's not going to work. Period, full stop. And that counts for all realms, whether it's workplace wellness or other things. You have to role model self-care. You have to role model, what does that look like? And it looks different for everyone. And what does it mean to be proactive about mental health in spring 2020? What does that mean? Hey, I signed up for Text for Hope. It's simple and it doesn't overwhelm me. Do you want to try that? Hey, I called our EAP. Easier than I thought. Hey, I booked an appointment with a mental health professional by video. It was great to connect. That's behavior that's contagious. That's role modeling self-care, and definitely role modeling professional care. So, hey team, I'm struggling. This week has been really hard. This has been my hardest week so far. And what I'm going to do about it is this. You don't have to overshare. No one's obligated to share exactly where they're going, the details. But if you're wondering how to make the best impact in a workplace as a leader with a team, sharing what you're comfortable sharing. I'm struggling this week and this is what I'm going to do about it. I think that's really good. Removing stigma is the second one. Language really, really matters. I want to be careful about how I might word this part.
Go for it.
Go for it?
Go for it.
Okay. Don't slap yourself on the wrist if you've said any of these things. Please don't. We're all human. We all have habits. We all say these things from time to time, but I will just plant a seed for everyone on the call. Try not to use the word crazy all the time. So I'm going crazy. It's such a crazy time. My kids are crazy. They're driving me crazy, 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 crazy. Okay. Are there some other words we can use? Are there? There are. I'm frustrated. I'm overwhelmed. I'm exhausted. I'm losing focus. I need a break. Let's try not to use some of this stigmatizing language. The other one, again, don't slap yourself on the wrist, just a food for thought. All the joking around about drinking. Whatever amount you may have been drinking before quarantine, it might have gone up. Okay, that's for you to figure out, you alone. But just stop and think about all the people, and statistically we know huge segments of the population living with mental illness, living with addiction, and now every single news feed, meme, joke, saying is quarantini, need a drink, homeschooling, need a drink, hard day, need a drink, crack a drink, right? Just think a little bit about how that's coming across. The other thing is I think a lot of people went straight to virtual drinks, which is fine. I'm happy for you. Please safely, happily enjoy that glass of wine, that beer, and the connection virtually. But just stop and think, is that safe and healthy for everyone you're inviting? Is there an option to say, bring your own beverage, whatever it is, instead of everybody has a double martini? I don't know. So language matters, and there's lots of easy things to look up around there. There's a few other things, but those would be my top two. Think about maybe crazy, 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 drink, drink, drink. Just take that one down about 20% too. Take that one down.
Well, it's funny because sometimes you can mention something like, I remember, is it wine o'clock or
Yeah.
just joking around, like it's been a long day, I need a drink. And I never really thought like that, to be honest, before.
Yeah.
But when people say it, I find myself going, is it wine o'clock yet? And I don't even think like that. And so sometimes the phrases that we bring up actually create thought patterns.
Well, and the undue pressure to now, that is our social norm. And I know I need social and I'm supposed to physical distance, but not social distance. And that means virtual drinks. Here we go. Okay, that's great. But I do know, again, not in a group setting, but one-on-one, folks are saying, I'm feeling this pressure, or all the people I know, and just more power to you if you're living at home and you have an addiction and you are potentially maybe just not surrounded with quite as much support, right?
Yeah.
It's difficult. It's difficult. And this is not to be a downer, friends and family, people on the call. This is not to be a downer. It's just to plant a little seed, food for thought, especially in the workplace. Now, you with your best friends, you want to joke around about quarantinis, go for it. If you're in a safe place and you know everyone you're talking to. But when you're in the workplace, think about stigmatizing language, think about making jokes. Um, the third thing for leaders, for human beings, removing barriers to accessing care. And those are things we can help with, right? So removing those barriers. And that means things like if you happen to be lucky enough to work for a company with benefits, OMG, get in there and understand what you have. It's boring. Remember I said stick to the boring? It's not super sexy to go in and read your benefits. I get it. I get it. Totally get it. But do you have 300 or 500 or $1,000 of psychology? I don't know. You should know. You should really, really know. Do you have any dependents in your house? Do they have coverage? Because when we're talking about role modeling self-care and professional care, you need to understand, what do I have access to? If you're working at a company that doesn't have benefits, and I know a lot of you might be small, medium size, figure out your local and online benefits. Have them handy. And it's no joke. Program it in your phone, whether it's the distress center, a helpline, any of those things. When a crisis comes and when you're in a moment when you really need help, it is hard to find the phone number. It's really hard. It's really hard. So let's make it easy, and let's make that a tangible role modeling thing as a leader. Hey folks, let's have a meeting. Let's get the Text for Hope going, and let's program in the Distress Center line or our EAP line. Just pick one. Don't do 17 phone numbers. And let's do that. That's a tangible way to show leadership, right?
That's absolutely true. I know a little earlier back, Leo had asked, how do you feel we are going to decelerate from COVID? I think he means mentally.
Well, I want to be optimistic, and I am in many, many ways. I'm optimistic because of the light that was getting brighter and brighter over the last few years, that has now put us in a place where this was one of the first things acknowledged, and the amazing providers and technology and platforms that are coming out makes me optimistic. I do think we should acknowledge there will be an indelible mark on society, on the world. There will be an indelible mark, and this isn't something we should try to erase. It's something we should try to acknowledge. I always think about the rings in a tree. Those rings are still there, but how do we thrive and create a tree that is still strong and rooted and growing? We're not removing this indelible mark. We're not going to be able to do that. But how do we survive day to day, week to week? How do we show ourselves some kindness and other people? How do we acknowledge our mental health, physical health, and all those things while not getting too overwhelmed and too overloaded? I mean, this is a tightrope we're all walking. Yeah. I'm optimistic, but I think the reality is there. The reality is there is that we had what many would call a mental health crisis looming pre-COVID. So this will be more accelerated, more acute, more pervasive, but I am very optimistic about the resources. You know, when I look to the Canadian Mental Health Association, the Mental Health Commission of Canada, and many, many, many other organizations and tools, like, they are so generous. When I look at you two, just offering and helping and being there. It's not a very precise answer, Leo.
But it's a good one.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of people, like you've mentioned, there's a lot of resource, there's good resource. We need to access, Canadian Mental Health Association is a perfect example of great resource. And I mean, why reinvent the wheel, right?
Yes.
You've
Yes.
mentioned that. Like, instead of starting something, join something, support something.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
I couldn't agree more. And just the last thing on the know your role. So role modeling, remove stigma, remove barriers. All of us can be a superhero and do those three things. Acknowledge what your role is and be relieved of what your role is not. It is not diagnosing people. It is not having a Zoom meeting and saying, you know, you seem depressed, you seem anxious, you seem schizophrenic. No, 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 no. And we are not diving into things like people's medications or specific therapies. That's not what we are all for. That is what the clinical mental health professionals are for. So be empowered by what we should be doing. Be relieved by what you don't need to do. We need to just get people over the bridge to the clinical mental health people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The, Abe, did you want to say something? You look like you're ready.
No, go ahead, Connie.
I just think that that is really, it is relieving. And just because we've read a book or had a personal experience doesn't mean that we're experts.
Yeah.
You know, I think that's really important. One thing I personally noticed just in my realm of resilience is that it's one thing to, you know, like that on Instagram. When you read that CMHA post and you're like, yes, and you like it and you're like, I believe in that. It's another thing to apply it. I'm noticing that this experience that we're all facing together in varying degrees is really challenging us to put to life what we like on Instagram and what we write down in our HR department.
Well, it's like you've read my mind. Yeah, I think let's chat, the three of us, a little bit about, you know, early days of quarantine, sort of where we are now, know your role, and then looking forward, because by all accounts, this is something we have months, if not years, in different formats to adjust to. So at work, while teams and employees and leaders, while we're living in quarantine or, you know, modified restrictions, whatever that looks like, think about how can you give your leaders and employees what they want. Now, if you think you know what they need and want, you might be bang on or close, but do you really know what they need and want? Like, have you asked them? Because they might be saying, what I want is less stuff. That might be what they're saying. It might not. So just ask them. And if you're in a position to use data, I had a question the other day from someone in a different company saying, oh, you know, we just hate doing surveys and people hate getting surveys. True, absolutely true. What I find interesting right now, employees are okay with a couple surveys right now because this is different. We're in a different time. And I get it. The company, the leader, the executives, whoever, they're trying to find out what I need and want. And I need to tell you what I need and want. So the surveys are landing, and at least at ATB, and I'm really proud of the work we do with surveys there, is the engagement in surveys has gone up. Like just participation. Because people are like, yep, I want to tell you what I need and want. And that's a good thing. So if you're in a position to do that, work-wise, I would highly recommend quick, simple, don't overload folks, not 300 questions, a little survey. What do you need and want? And if you're in a larger organization that might have a vendor for your EAP or your benefits, really work with them to get some data about what's going on. For smaller organizations, my advice, call Abe, work on your data. That'll be great. And then at home, so looking forward, I mean, I'm not an expert and I'm working on this. I always say Monday and Tuesday, I've got it. Wednesday, Thursday, little blurry. Friday, not so much, but, you know, be kind to yourself. So if that means using some of the charities that are out there, this is the time. You need to be humble and confident and use those charities. If you need them, please use them. If you are in a position to give to charity right now, be humble and confident. Please do it. Please do it. Be kind. The other thing is acknowledge we are now spending a lot more time with ourselves. With ourselves. Like there's a lot of interesting fears and thoughts that are going through your mind. It's overwhelming to have this much time in isolation with your own thoughts, much less anyone who might live under your roof. So this whole truth of the benefit of this time and the benefit of spending more time with my husband and kids. Great. Not all great though. Not all great. Like some parts are not great, but a lot of them are. So acknowledge that. And then think about self.
Did we lose your audio, Connie?
I'm still here, Tara.
Can you hear Tara's audio?
No,
No. Hey, Tara. I
And
think we.
spa treatments.
We
Sorry.
got spa treatments. That's what we just heard.
Yeah. Oh, spa treatments. Yeah. Self-care looks different. Could we put this in the chat? What does self-care look post-quarantine? What does that look like at home? And my free tip is teach your kids how to play spa.
Nice.
Yeah, because we're getting hand massages, foot massages, cucumbers on your eyes with a bite out of them. We're getting all kinds of stuff. So what does self-care look like in quarantine? What does that look like for you? It also means getting the fancy shower soap out. The soap you've been saving. Now's the time. Now's the time. Do it up. Do it up.
Yeah.
Yeah. And professional care. Yeah. What does that look like now? It looks like reaching out and having a video meeting with a mental health professional.
Yeah.
Sometimes you don't even realize that you need it. I think a lot of people think I'm fine. You know, we go throughout our day, we're working, you know, those of us who have a job right now, like, I mean, right now we have no shortage of need and work. And the other night I found myself annoyed and slamming the cupboard doors in my kitchen, because that's what my mom taught me, how we communicate frustration in our house.
Love it.
And I realized, I'm like, wait a minute, I'm really annoyed. I need to pay attention to this right now, because I'm not really an annoyed kind of person. Well,
I am.
I mean, my 13-year-old can do it, but you know what I mean? Like on the majority.
Yeah, I think be honest, like, you know, chat with a few people, the ones with kids, the ones without kids. You know, I'm so fortunate. I had a walk last night with one of my friends, and she was really honest with me about, you know, the Fridays, the end of the week parenting and what that looks like. And I was like, oh, I thought it was just me. I really did. It's not just you.
Yeah.
It's really not.
Anita brings up a really good point here. She says, you know, when we were in transition, there was, you know, a lot of reaching out and tips to how to transition. And she's like, now, you know, we've been in this for a while. People don't necessarily know how to reach out successfully.
Mm-hmm. And that is where I would say, if you have the energy, especially if you're a leader, but all human beings, have those 3 mental health resources at your fingertips, programmed into your phone, bookmarked in your browser, whatever that means. Because when you're in that moment in our conversation, you would be like, oh, hold on, I'm just going to look up what's the phone number to the distress center or the EAP. You know, have it ready to go. That's what really great non-clinical mental health support looks like. Hey, Abe, I signed up for Text for Hope. You know what the message was today? The message today was, find some time for yourself. I'm like, I know, right? Yes, thank you. Yeah, just simple little things. So have them ready, whether it's in the workplace or in your personal life. Like 3 mental health resources. That's the transition. You're absolutely right. That's a great question. So how do I reach out? Where do I reach out? So if they were brave enough and courageous enough to reach out to you, and then you say, I don't know. I mean, right? Like we need to finish the bridge. We need to say, okay, you came on the bridge, you're looking for help, go that way. And this is how. This is where you go. Okay, I got you. I'm going to walk you over the bridge to this mental health professional. I know it's virtual now, but I got you. Yeah.
That's good. I mean, I have my doctor in my phone. I have his phone number in my phone. Why would I not have mental health supports? And I think that even answers Dawn's question a little bit, which is, what would you say to those who are less resilient or chronically ill? I mean, this is key. And then I don't know if you want to add something else to that as well.
No, we're not actually having guests on the call. Are we having guests on the call?
Oh, I think we could have a guest appearance.
Oh my goodness. I'm at my new stand.
Beautiful guest.
This,
Hello.
this is my mini me. This is Abby Lynn Adams. Who made this necklace?
Abby,
That's right. Thank you. Okay, bye.
can I have one
Yeah.
of yours, please?
Yeah,
Why don't
bye.
you get some?
Bye. This is called working from home with little kids.
That's right.
Bye.
Love it. It brings the humanity back to work. And now, Tara, I feel like I know you even more because I've seen your daughter.
Well, let me tell you, it's a slippery slope. The first time you let her say hi in a meeting, and now it's every meeting. I hear you're talking to someone. I'm going to say hi.
Yeah, that's exactly what I've discovered too. And it's great, but it's also crazy, right? So just as we bring this to a conclusion, and you said so many things and so much good feedback in the chat here, any sort of final nuggets that you could share to the viewers here today. And again, we'll be posting this as well online. And so, definitely there's a pretty wide audience that taps into this. But as we're navigating COVID-19 and some of the mental health and emotional health kind of implications of all of that, what sort of final thoughts do you have for us?
Thank you, first of all. The first thing I would say is without undue pressure and without overwhelming anyone on the call. I mean, whatever coping strategies you have, keep it going. You don't need to triple the amount of things you're trying to create that recipe. But if you are looking for more, maybe it's in a workplace environment or maybe it's at home. I'm super proud of the Mental Health Commission of Canada. This week, they started offering free online training to essential workers. Like that is just how you do it, right? So if you're in the market for some workplace mental health training, there's a module taking care of self, taking care of teams, taking care of others. So not to over flood their system right now, but it's free of charge for essential workers. So that's one thing to throw out there. The second would be a course that Connie and I are super proud of and have done is the Brain Story. It's free, it's online, it is just amazing for lay people. Basic neuroscience that could really, I mean, I don't want to use this phrase, but I'm serious, change your life. It could change your life, your family, the people around you, at work. So the Brain Story is a huge recommendation. And any of the folks out there that have sporty teenagers, or the rest of us, all of us, but especially anyone with a sporty teenager, I'm a huge fan of I Got Mind. It's a Calgary-based organization, and they are doing so much great free work around mental health in teenagers right now. So if you want more, those are my top three, because I'm trying to stick to three, remember? Mental Health Commission of Canada, The Brain Story, and I Got Mind. And my final thoughts are, if you really, really want to help, you need to reach out to anyone who might be struggling with mental illness, grief, addiction, or family violence. So sadly, all of those are on the rise, all of them. Yeah. So we, the lay people, we need to think about who might be struggling with any of those things: mental illness, grief, addiction, family violence, and do reach out. And then I have one last thing. So as a thank you to Connie and Abe for having me today, I know you're a huge fan of the Calgary Food Bank. So I made a donation this morning on behalf of the Adams family.
Awesome.
And I use the ATB Cares platform because they match 15% of your donation.
Oh, thank you. That's so amazing. Thank you so much.
That is for
awesome.
Wellness Innovates and all the work you're doing. Yeah, the Adams family.
And so that ATB's Care platform, that's open to the whole public?
Yeah.
Okay. So tell us a little bit about that, because Food Bank, Calgary Food Bank, whatever cause resonates in people's hearts. Maybe somebody listening wants to donate. So we'd love to hear about that.
They have every charity registered there that you can imagine. It's a really simple platform, ATB Cares. Just Google it. I went on there this morning. They have a general charity donation you can make for COVID relief funds. There's also a strong connection with the United Way because they're very broad. But I just happen to know that your hearts lie with the Calgary Food Bank, so I chose that one specifically this morning.
Yeah, thank you so much. And, I mean, I think that they do such good work. Obviously, at this time, food security is perhaps more important than any other type of security beyond obviously shelter. And, it's just staggering to me the sheer number of Calgarians that they impact every single year, hundreds of thousands, right? And I don't know that there's any other charity, maybe the United Way, that has that
Yeah.
kind of scope, right, in this city for sure. So thanks for that, Tara, and such great information. That's just awesome. We're so grateful for what you shared here today. Without a doubt, kudos to ATB for allowing you to be on this today, and for the kind of support that they've given you, undoubtedly, as you've been in your role over the years, right?
Recently won the Great Place to Work in Canada last week. I mean,
Wow.
humbly just blown away. Yeah.
And 98% of that is because of you, right? For sure. No. So, just as we kind of come to a close here, we just share a couple of quick thoughts, not to overload you, but interestingly, Connie sent this to me this morning. And this is very recent, April 26th. So that's 3 days ago, from Angus Reid. New data paints a picture of a nation, that's us, Canada, whose optimism and resilience has literally been depressed by the events of the last month and a half. That's their assessment. What they found is that half of Canadians, so that's 1 out of 2 of us on this call today, report a worsening of their mental health. And this is self-reported, but self-reporting when it comes to mental health actually is really an important indicator, right? I mean, there's no blood test for this, and often even psychiatrists are going to use self-reporting as a great way of understanding what's happening. And 1 in 10 in Canada are saying that it's their mental health has worsened a lot. And I guess we share that because, asked to describe how they've primarily been feeling in recent weeks, Canadians are most likely to say they've been worried. That's 44%. 41% are saying that they're anxious. And I think it's important that we understand that there's a difference between sort of clinical diagnosable mental health issues where you need a mental health therapist or a specialist, and what I would call more everyday mental health issues, because of what's happening and the society-wide trauma that COVID-19 has clearly brought. I'm going to take a pretty strong statement and say that most of us are probably feeling more anxious and more stressed than we normally would, right?
Yeah.
Does that mean we've got to go and see a specialist? Maybe. But sometimes it's really just about getting into some resiliency building techniques that can support us. And so we just really, see lots of opportunity. I know the work that Connie and I have been doing, particularly with organizations, has been really cool. And when we say organizations, that means people, right? An organization is just people. And, please, if you're on this call today, reach out. If you would like us to work with your group. We've been doing a lot of group coaching and essentially peer support, which is really important to get through some of these challenges right now on some of those issues that are on your screen, and many, many others. And, obviously, if you do need or would like some sort of information or more one-on-one support, just go ahead and reach out to Connie. Her phone number is 1-800-CONNIE. No, just joking. We should probably get you a phone number like that, Connie, though, shouldn't we? I try to figure that out. But for now, we just have an email address, pretty simple, connie@wellnessinnovate.com. And we just also encourage you to follow us on Wellness Innovate on Facebook and or LinkedIn, because we'll be posting this video on both LinkedIn and Facebook as just a way to continue to reach out. And Tara, thanks again so much. And maybe we'll turn it over to Connie for any closing thoughts as we wrap up today.
Oh, I just want to thank you, Tara. This has just been absolutely amazing. And it really does reflect the kind of coffees that we have. And, this is just like we're sitting in Monogram right now. And so I just want to thank you for coming, and thank you everyone for joining us every week. I believe this is our 7th one. We do this every week. We do them free because right now we really are just committed to making sure that no one is left behind. And making it free makes it accessible. We bring in guests that we feel they are that have something. Next week we have Dawn. He's going to be talking about conflict management, and I think it might be really timely next week. That's you, Dawn.
I'm going to log into that one for sure.
Because we might be getting there now, you know. So I'm really excited about that. But everyone, just keep going and don't be afraid to reach out if you need anything.
Absolutely. And again, please do join us next week. I mean, you know, I received some pretty interesting phone calls myself in the last couple of days about, you know, high level business conflict resolution. And I think it's really, you know, probably going to increase before it gets worse. And Don he's an expert in this field, you know, fresh start mediation, well known in the Southern Alberta area. And we're really honored to have him. And thank you so much, Tara. You know, follow us on those social media platforms. But we'll just give it to you, Tara, for one last word or thought, and then we'll conclude today.
Well, those of you who know me or are getting to know me, you know, I'm in a career that has a lot of serious undertones and topics, and I talk to people that are struggling, and it gives me a lot of joy and satisfaction to help people get over that bridge. But you know, there's some funny things too. Like my best piece of advice, if you have pierced ears, don't forget to put your earrings in. I did not put my earrings in for 6 weeks. I had to like start over. And all that special bath soap you're saving, I mean, break it out this weekend. Come on, live it up. But if you need help, the strongest thing you can do is reach out for help. The biggest act of bravery and courage you can do is say, I need help. And for the rest of us, if you're not in that situation yet, how are you going to answer that question? When someone says, I need help, what are you going to say? What are you going to do? You got to be ready. Get your phone out, program 3 things, just 3. That's my final thought. It's hard for me to stop talking.
Love that. So good. Thank you so much, Tara. And thanks everybody for joining. And we'll see you next week at the same time, everybody.
Bye.
Take care.